Okay, Sheni Yudeis Parshas Kisovo. Kischal Lases Komasit was Subshana Shlishis. When one completes tithing all the tithes in the third year, Shnas Hamaser. Now, the order of tithing is the first year, if you have the produce of that grows in Eretz Yisrael, one has to take Truma that goes to the Kohen. Then you take the first 10% goes to the Levi, and then you have to take a second 10%. Usually it's called Masa Sheni. Of the sabbatical cycle, the first and second year, you take Masa Risha, Masa Sheni. The first Masa goes to the Levi. The second Masa is called Masa Sheni. One, it has sanctity. One has to take it and eat it in Yerushalayim. It cannot be eaten out of the wall of Yerushalayim. And the Torah explains what happens if it's too difficult to transport the produce. You take minted coins and you redeem it. You transfer the kedusha of the Masa Sheni onto those coins. You take the money to Yerushalayim and you purchase with it food. Does not be produce, but you purchase food. That's what you do. The third year of the sabbatical cycle, it's called Maisa Oni. You give the second percent as charity to the poor. Has no sanctity, the money. And this repeats itself. The fourth year, again, Masa Sheni. Fifth year, Maisa Sheni. The sixth year, Maisa Oni. So let's see. So we're speaking about the third year, Shnas HaMaser. It's the year of the Masa. There's only one Masa, because Masa Oni happens only once every 3 years. Kischale Laser is called Masa Tvosub Shana Ashlishis. So Rashi says, when you finish tithing the tithes of the third year, the Torah sets in place, you have to make a confession and remove and distribute all the tithes. Let's say a person didn't distribute all the tithes up to that point. He has accumulated Masa Sheni, Masa Oni, Truma. He didn't give it all away. Shnema Miktzei, Sholasham Totzi, Nema Kan Miketz, Nema Halom Mikei Shevashonim, Hakemal Lahala Regel. We're speaking, it's during the Chag, during the festival. Imal Sukkos, Afkan Sukkos. It's the Sukkos of the fourth year. Mlamed Kischal Lasa Masu Shoshana Shlishis. Regel Shemasus Kolin Bo. When do you finish tithing in the fourth year? Is at Pesach. Why? Shaharbi Lonos Yeshnol Kotin Achasukas. The many trees, fruit trees, that you harvest those trees after Sukkos. In terms of grain and other harvest, Sukkos is completed. But there are certain trees, you're not finishing picking the fruit until Pesach. So when are you able to finish tithing the third year? In what? When you pick the fruit in the fourth year, those trees that haven't fully ripened. And a person who did not distribute the tithes during these 3 years, it's Richa Akos Levarim min Abayis. The Torah says you must distribute it now. Shnas HaMaser. It's only one maser is in effect, because we said the first 2 years is Maser Rishon, Maser Sheni. The third year, it's only one. Maser Rishon, Maser Sheni is not in place. And then Maser Sheni, Harishnei Masros, Ubal Lamdoch, Shlishi Sheinog, which one is in place the third year? Masa Rishon, Tax Masa Sheni, and the second 10%, Itim Masa Oni, Shenemar Vinosata La Levi, you give it to Levi, Levi has no share in the land. Masa Rishon, Leger, Liosem, L'Almono, Zeh Masa Sheni. Okay? Then it says, V'ochlu b'sharech v'saveyu. When you give it to the convert, to the orphan, to the widow, you give it to them, and they're sated. So Rashi says, when the poor man comes to receive his tithe, you can't give him just a pittance. You have to give him a certain substantial amount of that grain that he sated by it. Okay? And what is the confession? We're speaking of a person didn't distribute all these tithes during these 3 years. Now, the 4th year, he's distributing everything, and he makes a declaration. And you say before Hashem, I've removed all that was holy from my home. And also I distributed the tithes to the Levi, who's considered a poor man, to the ger, to the convert, according to all the mitzvahs, which means I adhered to all the mitzvahs as you commanded me. I did not transgress your mitzvahs regarding these tithes. We'll see Rashi in a minute, and I haven't forgotten. Take a look at Rashi. You confess, you make a declaration, I've distributed all the tithes. This is Masasheni, which is Yerushalayim. That Ravai is the first 3 yields of a fruit tree is Orlo. You're not permitted to eat, has to be destroyed, burnt. The 4th year is called Neta Ravai. It has the same status as Masasheni. It can only be eaten in Yerushalayim. Lindoch Shimsho, my Sosa Shal Shtei Shonim, Gloel Yerushalayim. He did not bring those tithes to Shalayim. Now he has to bring them there. Gam Nasativ Levi. What did you give to the Levi's? A Maser Rishon. The Gam the Rabos Trumo Bikurim. Also, that goes to the Kohen. The Geri Losam Amono is a Maser Shoni. Now, this is important. When you tithe grain, there's an order. First, you take Trumo, then you take Maser Rishon, Maser Sheni. What about if you take Maser before you take the Truma? Is it valid? Is it valid tithing? You hadn't yet taken the Truma, but you took Maser. It's valid. But it's a Torah violation, because the Torah says when you tithe the produce of Eretz Yisrael, there's a specific sequential order. So the person is saying, and when I tithe it, I tithe it in the appropriate order, which is the Truma first, which goes to the Kohen, the Maser Rishon goes to the Levi, or the Kohen, and Maser Sheni, or Maser Oni. That's the order of tithing. The Satim Kisidron, when I tithe them in their appropriate order. I did not take the Truma before Bikurim. Bikurim we spoke about. The farmer, when he sees the grain or the fruit ripening on the tree, he marks it. So that's the first thing to do. I did not take the 10% before I took the Truma. I didn't take the second 10% before the first. Truma kriya rishis. She kruya, she rishon, once it reaches a certain degree of development, a third of its growth, it takes on the status of grain. It's a negative commandment. When it reaches that level of ripeness, you cannot delay. You don't change the order. I did not tithe from one species on the other. If it was from 1 year to the next year, you can only tithe from something that's been detached from the ground, something that's still on the tree or still growing from the ground. You cannot tithe on that. Now, this is interesting. Our understanding is that the only bracha which is a Torah obligation is Birchas Hamazon. That after you've eaten of the grains of Eretz Yisrael and you say it in Torah says v'chaltam so'atu v'irachtam. That's the only bracha which is the Doraisa. All the brachas are rabbinical. There's a question of Birchas HaTorah. But other than Birchas HaTorah and Birchas Hamazon, everybody's in agreement it's rabbinical. But yet, when he says and Birchas HaMitzvos, definitely everybody's in agreement, it's rabbinical. But what's lo shachafti? When I tithe it, you're doing a mitzvah. So you say a bracha, Ashek Sham Tzivano, Al Hachalo, Al Hafroshes Truma. You say a bracha, Lo Shachachti Milvercha, Al Hafroshes Maisus. I did not forget to bless you when I tithed it. What do you see over here? You understand? It's interesting. If it's only rabbinical, when he makes his confession that he did everything right, what is he saying? I did not forget to say the bracha when I tithe the particular tithe. There's no obligation to tithe, so what does he have to confess? Right? But yet, part of the confession is lo shachachti milavecha al avroshes meisers. So how do we understand it? Famous machlokes arguing between the Rambam and the Ramban. When it says in the Krishma, you should serve God with all your heart. And the Gemara says, Ezu avodah shebelev. What is the service of the heart? Zu tefillah. It's tefillah. So the Rambam explains that drasha, that interpretation, that's a Torah interpretation. Therefore, the Rambam rules that every Jew in every 24-hour period has to pray to Hashem once a day. Tefillah is a chiv d'oraisa, is a Torah obligation. That's Rambam. The Ramban writes, no, it's rabbinical. One has no obligation even within the 24-hour period for tefillah. The interpretation is purely an asmachta. It's a rabbinical interpretation. It's a rabbinical takeaway. So Rameir Simcha of Dvinsk explains that even though the Ramban argues with Rambam, but nevertheless the concept is a Torah concept. That a Jew, if you choose to pray, you're fulfilling a mitzvah d'oraisa. You have no obligation. The argument is only whether you have an obligation to pray within a 24-hour period. Tefillah is an obligation. But if you are mispalel, you fulfill a mitzvah d'oraisa. The concept is a Torah concept. So if you understand that nothing happens by itself, and you have to be worthy, and the worthiness is based on the acknowledgement that Hashem is the one who determines how things evolve and manifest themselves, you pray. So when you come to that level of recognition and you supplicate Hashem, you fulfill a mitzvah. That's a mitzvah. It has value. So here we're talking about Hashem has given us a mitzvah of tithing meiser, tithing truma, tithing all these things. If you have an understanding of what it's about, that it's a privilege, it's Asher Kidshan Mitzvos of Tzivonu. He gave us this mitzvah to sanctify us. We're not saying it's an obligation, but how did you miss the boat? You had an opportunity when you tithed it. How did you not appreciate the value of what you're doing? So a person naturally would say the bracha. Not that it's an obligation. It's not a chiyuv. Rabbis, they never legislated the bracha. But if you are at the level, we're talking about Hakor Satov and everything here, if you are at the level to understand what Hashem has given you, how do you not express it and predicate it on a bracha? That's the confession. The Gemara tells us in Megillah, asks, why on Purim don't we say Hallel? You can't tell me because it's a rabbinic holiday, because on Hanukkah we say Hallel. So the Gemara asks, why don't we say Hallel on Purim? So Rav Nachman says, because Kriyosa Zuhi Ludo. When you read the Megillah, that's the Hallel. What does that mean? Meaning, when you articulate the words and you say the words which were written by Mordechai and Esther, which is the narrative from the beginning till the end, the totality of what happened there, expressing it, you're touching away, you're saying Hallel. That acknowledgement is the equivalent of Hallel. That's Rav Nachman. Kriyosa Zuhilu, the reading is the equivalent of the Hallel. Meaning, when you're touched in a certain way, it evokes certain things within you, which those words are coupled with that feeling, and that is the Hallel. When you have this opportunity of taking Meiser, I mean, how do you not say a bracha? Well, I have no obligation. Makes the difference if we have an obligation or not. Give you an example. The Gemara tells us in Nochos, there was an Amora, his name was Rav Katina. Rav Katina, and the Torah tells us that when you have a four-cornered garment, you have to put tzitzis on the four corners. Rav Katina, when he had his outer garment tailored by the tailor, he always told the tailor, make sure to round off the corners. They should not be square. To exempt himself from the obligation of tzitzis. So a malach comes to Rav Katina. A malach. He was an Amora. and asks him, why don't you have tzitzis on your corner of your frock? She says, because they're not square, they're round. He says, I understand you have no obligation. But if you could have had it tailored where they're square, not rounded, and you could fill the mitzvah, why did you evade the mitzvah? She says, whatever he said, the reason. So the Malach says to me, realize, under normal circumstances, there's no claim against you. But since you could have easily fulfilled the mitzvah by having it tailored, by the corners being square, and did not, if there is a shazam, if God forbid there's a time of prosecution on Klal Yisrael on you, this will not stand in you. It's going to be a claim against you. Well, you could have done a mitzvah easily, and you evaded yourself in the mitzvah, and you need a schus, you need a merit, this is going to be a claim against you. So Rabbeinu Yonah writes, it's not only regard to tzitzis, any mitzvah that you can do easily, and you don't, although it's not an obligation, there's a claim against the person. Why didn't you do the mitzvah? If at a time when you need that extra schus, that could be a basis for prosecution. It's any mitzvah. What do you think? We have an obligation with tzitzis. But the Mechaber says that because tzitzis represents Tari mitzvahs, it's something we should bring upon ourselves. That's why people with tzitzis under their shirt. You have no obligation. But because it can be easily acquired, it's not that difficult, we wear it, although you have no obligation. So that's why there's certain times, we allow us not to wear the tzitzis. You go swimming. You take the tzitzis down to the swimming pool with you. At the moment you come out of the pool, you put your tzitzis back on. You don't. Some people do. That's the reason why, I'll just tell it personal, when I get dressed in the morning, although I don't say I don't say bracha on my tzitzis, because I say a bracha on my talis, but factually, I put on my tzitzis as soon as I can before I put on other parts of my clothing. Why? Because if I could put on the tzitzis sooner, where I start fulfilling the mitzvah of tzitzis, why delay? Every moment you wear tzitzis is a fulfillment of a positive commandment. Well, I'll put it on 5 minutes later. If you could put it on 5 minutes earlier, why wait 5 minutes to put it on later? It's the same idea. Chas v'sholem be a claim. If you could have done the mitzvah earlier, why did you delay? If you could have said the bracha, although you have no obligation, why did you say the bracha? So that's part of the confession. When I tithed the meiser, I did say the bracha, although it's not an obligation. But understanding what the value is, bracha before you do the tithing. I did not eat of the Meiser Sheni Boni when he was an Oni. That's before the burial of the dead. Lo biarti mimenu betome. I did not consume it when I was in a contaminated state. Lo nesati menu lames. Okay. So Rashi says, Lasas lo oron tachrichin, to use it as the coffin for the person or the shrouds. This is it. Shematim kol Hashem Elokoi. I've heeded the word of Hashem Elokoi. Osisi kol Hashem. First it says, I've heeded the word of Hashem, the voice of Hashem. I've done all that He commanded me. What does Rashi say? Shematim kol Hashem Elokoi heveisiv lebeis habechiro. This is referring to the Bikurim. I brought the Bikurim basically. I've done all that you commanded me. What did you command me? Command me? What does Rashi say? Somachti v'simachti. So I've rejoiced and I've caused others to rejoice. Meaning by distribution of the tithes to the Levi, the Truma, all these people, the poor man, Samachti v'simachti. I've rejoiced and I made others rejoice. What does that mean? A person has nothing, you give him something substantial, he rejoices. That's simachti, grammatically, right? What's the samachti? If you have to give away 20% of your profit, are you samachti? It's a hefty piece of change, as they say. But yet, when you give it away, you have to be at a level that you do the mitzvah b'simcha. It's a mitzvah to give the tithe and give it to the rightful parties. You say your declaration is, I've done all that. Not only did I give it, I didn't give it begrudgingly, I did it with joy. Not only did I bring joy to the recipient, but I myself experienced joy when I gave it away. Okay? That's part of the confession. So we're talking about on a qualitative level. He did the mitzvah. Samachti. That was the ultimate opportunity. Now, the person makes a supplication. You should gaze down from your holy abode, min hashamayim, uvorech es amcha es Yisrael. You should bless your people, Yisrael. That's Adoma shenasato lanu. And the land, the earth that you've given us, kasher nishbata lavosenu, as you promised to our forefathers, eretz avos chol v'dvosh. So what's Rashi? Hashkif mokochra, osinu masher gazarto aleinu. We've done what you decreed upon us. We fulfilled our obligation. This is after he makes the confession that he distributed all the tithes, the bikurim, the truma, the meiser, meiser sheni, meiser oni. He's given it all away, and he's given it away somachti v'simachti. Not only did I bring joy to the ones who received it, even when I did the mitzvah, I did it with joy. If that's the case, now I'm worthy. Asinu masher gazato aleinu. We've done what you decreed upon us. Now you must do what you said you would do. I just want to mention, today's my yahrzeit, mine and Alan's yahrzeit. The learning is in memory of our parents, our father, Moshe ben Yosef, and Alan, Yisrael ben
Tzvi Hirsch.
Ben Tzvi Hirsch. Aliyah for the neshamas.
Amen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Asay masholech lasos. What did Hashem command us to do? Shamat in b'chuksai telechu. Right, the end of Chumash Vayikra. In b'chuksai telechu, v'osati gishmechem b'itom. You said that if we follow your statutes, you bring rains in the proper time. We've done what you told us to do. That's the basis for the supplication. So the question is, if you take a look in Chazal over there, what does it say? If you toil in Torah, and Torah is primary and everything else is secondary, the bounty will come, the rain will come. It's brocha ad b'lidai, unlimited brocha. That's into amelim b'Torah. And here he says, why are we worthy of the what? Of the bracha? Because what did Hashem say? What is this giving the tithes properly and appropriately? What does that have to do with if you toil in Torah? That's what we merit, this unlimited bounty. So how do we reconcile the two Chazal? Okay. What I said in the past is this. We said, when he says, I've done all that you've commanded me, samachti v'simachti. Not only did I bring joy to the recipients, when I gave it, I also rejoiced. So I asked, you give away a substantial amount of your profit. Do you rejoice? It's not simple. I did it because I have no choice. You know, we're talking about teva, unless you tithe it and give it. So therefore, it's samachti. I rejoiced when I gave it away. Could you imagine? Person says, you know, I want $100,000. You should give it tzedakah. And I want you to rejoice when you give it tzedakah, like when I give you an investment, guaranteed 10 times return on that investment. One is easy, right? Guaranteed return 10 times your money. Of course, you rejoice. When you give the tithes to the Kohen, Levi, and the poor, and all this, Not only is it important to be simachti, you have to be somachti. You have to rejoice. You found good fortune. Okay? How do you do that? It's what Jay mentioned. If you live a life of Amelim Batorah, that what's primary to you is the study of Torah and doing the will of God, everything else, it's an opportunity. You don't see giving this away, than getting that return on your investment 1,000 times what you invested. This is the ultimate, this is the opportunity. This is a means to an end. Me being able to do this, that's exactly why I'm here. So therefore, this is a confirmation that I fulfilled because otherwise you couldn't be samachti. The only reason why you can be samachti, you have that perspective, is because you're able to internalize the value of what? Of the mitzvah itself. That's why samachti.
That's every mitzvah.
In one area you permitted test Hashem. It's tzedakah. The navis ubechununi zobezos. You can test me in this area. Why, when it comes to charity, to tzedakah? When you give away something, you have less, it's the greatest test. And Hashem says, because it's so difficult, you could test me, right? That I will I will rain down bracha upon you unlimited. And that will be proof of the pudding that you'll see the return on that. Regarding any other thing, you're not permitted. When it comes to giving away, you're permitted. I'm not saying you should, but you're permitted. You're not in violation of testing God. God says, try me on this one. Ased ta'aser. Ased b'shul shik t'sasher. So here, that's exactly it. What is it? Samachti. God says you could try me, but you're not at that special level. When you're special level, to be samachti, okay?